very warm welcome to our first guest this morning, Aidan Walsh from Sporting Pride. Aidan, you're very welcome to Sport for Business.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be here and have an opportunity, I suppose, to tell the Sport for Business members a bit about Sporting Pride and people who may not know what we're involved in and what we do. So I'm here from my LGBTQ studio in Cabra in Dublin, which I transformed this morning, and I've a T-shirt of a new campaign. We've done it with Sport Ireland as well, which Helen will speak about afterwards too. So delighted to be here. So thanks for having us. What is also, I suppose, it's Dublin Pride. June is traditionally the Pride month, and in normal times this would be Pride Week, and it's it's Dublin Pride's Health and Wellness Week. So we're delighted that fits in with this idea with the weather and everything.
It has been a very busy week for you. You've been running a number of different web sessions as well that are running all the way through this week. But first of all, let's kind of touch on that Let's Get Visible campaign, because it has been it's been a great success. It is highly visible. So hashtag Let's Get Visible, it was an appropriate one. But where did the conversation kick off with Sport Ireland and the NGBs, so that you could feel as though the energy and the effort it needed to go into preparing a campaign like this was actually going to be well received and well shared?
Well, I think, Rob, it's kind of coming over the last few months. Lockdown has brought its own challenges regarding meetups and that type of thing. So we've been working closely with Sport Ireland, a number of the national governing bodies, about developing campaigns that showcase the LGBT community. And I think one of the key issues is visibility at a community and a national level, to show that, you know, if you are a member of the LGBT community, you may not be out. That your sport, your community, your local club, that your governing body supports and welcomes you, whether that's a player, volunteer, coach, official. So there's so many different ways that can be involved. So we sat down with Sport Ireland a number of months ago. Helen will take you through some of the research that they're doing, and we kind of came up with this idea of the Let's Get Visible campaign to target the governing bodies, local sports partnerships, and to show their support especially during Pride Week, because almost the sense of isolation you can feel if you are a member of the community in rural Ireland, for example, that the sport does support you, and you can be yourself with your club mates. You'll have the support from your coach, from your club, and also from the governing body. So it's been a brilliant campaign. We launched it Monday. And it's essentially a digital campaign, an online media campaign, as you said, hashtag Let's Get Visible. And it trended earlier on the week. It's been fantastic. And I suppose the challenge for us now is, how do we take that forward and make sure it's not a one-off campaign? How can we develop policies and campaigns with the different governing bodies, with the local sports partnerships, in coordination with Sport Ireland, to make sure that there's campaigns that go forward, that can help people targeted at the LGBT community?
We speak within the sporting world of the massive community benefits that are to be gained from coming together in friendly competition, and the fact that sporting clubs are at the heart of every community, every borough of Dublin, every parish in Ireland has got sport very much at the heart of it. And it's often how we define ourselves. We consider ourselves to be very open and welcoming, but sometimes the reality, as opposed to the perception, is not quite the same. How are we at the moment in terms of being welcoming to the LGBTQ plus community, and how have we moved from a few years ago? And then we'll talk about how we can move even better in the future. But at this moment in time, where does sport sit as part of an open, welcoming community for the Pride community?
I think sport is a little bit behind the rest of society. We've made huge strides in Ireland over the last number of years, between the marriage referendum, between having a gay Taoiseach. There's lots of elements to Irish society which have been hugely welcoming to the LGBT community. Sport is probably lagging slightly behind in that. There's very little part of the research that Helen and Sport Ireland is doing with the ultimate goal of having an inclusion policy in sport. There isn't currently any inclusion policy in sport. Many national governing bodies don't have an inclusion policy, whether inclusion, wider inclusion, including non-nationals, traveller inclusion, disability inclusion, LGBT inclusion. So inclusion in sport is a little bit behind, but we're confident that there is strides being made to be able to bring that forward. Like, I suppose why Sporting Pride was set up in 2017 was purely for that. We felt there wasn't an advocacy group promoting the sport and why sport is so important, both from a physical point of view, plus also the mental side of it, and how sport can become more inclusive in Ireland. And I think we're currently at a good space. I think it's brilliant. This Let's Get Physical campaign is there, and it's showing that there's a desire to make change and to make the LGBT community much more inclusive in sport. But I suppose at the end of the day, it's in everyone's interest. All sports are looking for more people. All clubs are looking for extra members, extra volunteers, extra supporters, extra coaches, extra officials. And I suppose if we can show that sport is inclusive, such as the visibility campaign, it makes a more welcoming, safe environment for all members of society. And that can only, going forward, be good for sport, even in decision-making circumstances. Rob, from the point of view of, a lot of decisions made within sport is by middle-aged white men, straight men. And I suppose the more diverse we can get, more female involvement, more people from different backgrounds, if we can get involved in sport, can make sport a better, more open, welcoming society for everybody. So I think that the signs are very positive, and this launch of the Let's Get Physical campaign is a first steps. And I suppose I'd say that's the challenge is almost nearly how we can develop that going forward, to make sure it's not a one-off campaign that you're ticking a box. We want to see this lasting part of all sport in Ireland and all national governing bodies and local sports partnerships.
As a midlife, grey-haired, pale-skinned man, I absolutely accept the fact that it hasn't been the most diverse of worlds, and yet we kind of tend to ignore that a little bit, which is at a peril. You're absolutely right. The advances, the colour, the vibrancy, the life, the fact that that we could pull through the referendum, and that we could have cabinet ministers that were proud to come out, and then we should have a Taoiseach in that way. You're absolutely right. But sport at its highest level, it's not just an Irish thing. Sport at its highest level has been very slow. I mean, for the vast majority of the existence of professional football, John Fashanu was the only gay man ever to play football, which, looking at the statistics, as I sometimes do, seems to be something of an outlier, like by about 1,000,000% of an outlier. So what is it then? Is it that in that world, those who express themselves, who are gay or lesbian, are afraid to come out within the environment? Is that the thing? Because in Gaelic games, Donald Cusack, Valerie Mulcahy, and many more, including star at the moment, Hannah Tyrrell, come out very proud to say that, Hannah Tyrrell, very proud to say that she had to postpone her wedding because of the delayed Six Nations to her partner, and she was there at the final game. But all of those things, there's not enough of them, that it's not in any way, shape or form representative of the number in society who are LGBTQ.
Yeah,
how can that be?
I think a lot of it has to do with start at the lowest level, from ground up, at a kid's level, and language used in dressing rooms and that type of thing. I think that the influence we get at school, at youth level, language that is used to maybe turns people away from sport a lot of time, and we find a lot of drop off in secondary schools between the LGBTQ plus community and getting into third level. People then at that stage kind of drop out of sport because maybe they didn't find a welcoming environment, the language that was used. And I think that's a zero tolerance policy around language is an important thing that to be brought in future around coaches or language or teammates, homophobic slurs that can happen especially at a youth level kind of thing. I think one of the challenges in Ireland, and Ireland is in a unique space, I think we can be world leaders in inclusion of the LGBT community in sport, because of our the societal marriage referendum cause. Katie McCabe, the captain of the women's international football team. Obviously Leo Varadkar being ex-Taoiseach. We are in a really good place in Ireland. If we want to take the lead in this in world sport, we can do this because the society and the plans are there. I think a key part, Rob, is the sports club inclusion of the LGBT community is unique in that there's two prongs to it. One, yes, we need to make sure all sport is inclusive and that whether at a local level in all sports that kids and adults are encouraged to be who they are and to be out within their own club. But the second point of that, and Richie from Aidan Walsh will allude to this a bit more in his chat, which is the importance of the LGBT sports clubs, because I suppose LGBT inclusion is uniquely different to other types of inclusion in that you may be, playing sport in your local community in Limerick, or your GA club in Donegal and your triathlon club in Cork, but you could be on your own amongst straight teammates. And there'll become a time in your life when you get older where you want to meet people who are like you. And gay culture is quite a daunting place if you are on your own and you don't know anyone else who is gay. How do you go into their first gay bar? How do you meet new people? How do you engage your friends if you know nobody? And I think that's why that feeling of isolation, and I know personally from my own point of view, from being from Mayo and not knowing anyone who's gay, that actually having a sports club is so important. In an existing sports, I could join a gay football team is what I did originally 7 or 8 years ago when I came out first off. And suddenly now I have people who are like me and I can make new friends. And that daunting world of gay life, which, I'd seen on TV and is a scary place, it's suddenly not so scary because you have this, you have the support of teammates and friends who you meet through sport. So sport helps you on the physical side, but also helps you on the mental side and developing as a person. And I think that is the unique element of why the sports clubs are so important for the LGBT community and why they need to be embraced by the national governing bodies, by Sport Ireland, because a lot of them are working currently independently, doing great work on their own with very little financial support. And I think just that helping people work their way through the LGBT life is really what they're as important to what they're about than the physical side. It's meeting new people.
I've always felt that the kind of the pale male and stale dominance of our society has largely been fostered by the connections and the life lessons that you can learn through sport. So it's great to hear you saying that it can sort of open out, because if your personal life and if your decision on who you want to fall in love with is excluded from sport, then you're excluded from sport, and that means that you're not going to be able to come through the ranks to become a change maker and a decision maker, as well as potentially a half decent left back or whatever position you play in, Aidan. But you're right, like that. The importance of it is now a given. In terms of where we're at, it's improved. It's much better. If there were one or two things that you had on your agenda for the next 12 months, so that when we come back again, maybe even in person, heaven knows, at the same week next year, that you would like to have seen changed over the course of this 12 months, what would they be?
Well, I think Sport Ireland, the research Sport Ireland have been doing on inclusion is very important, and I think the results of that are due out in the coming months. And the result, what those findings are, and the development of those is really important. And I think that's for that to be filtering down into the governing bodies is a key part. I think funding, the fact that a lot of governing bodies don't currently have an inclusion policy needs to change, and that every sport should have an inclusion policy which is then developed and brought down a level to a club community level, and funding should be related to that as well. That we want that every club, every sport in the country to be inclusive of all, I say not just LGBT inclusion, but inclusion across the board. And I think that's a key part. And the fact that Helen and Sport Ireland are doing such great work, we're delighted that Sport Ireland have now taken the steps to develop and to see that inclusion in sport is so important, and we're really supporting and delighted to be working closely with them on developing that policy. That's a huge part of it. And I think a second thing would be that the Let's Get Visible campaign, making sure that now we encourage the governing bodies who took that first step of showing their support for the LGBT community to now work with Sport Ireland, with Sporting Pride, and see how we can develop campaigns such as Nikki and Triathlon Ireland have done to actually to target the LGBT community, and how we can do specific campaigns to target that community. And then the final one, it will be the existing sports clubs and getting more support to the sports clubs, whether that's through corporate partnerships. And it's fantastic to have this opportunity to speak to a number of corporate businesses as members of Sport for Business. We would love to speak to them and help these LGBT clubs develop further and to grow in the community, make more awareness, so that people are aware that these clubs are there, and offer that a way out of isolation for people who may be on their own, maybe totally included within their own local community, but now want to reach out and meet other people from similar backgrounds, and the existing sports clubs are so important in that.
Okay, just one before I let you go. I coach a number of teams in Gaelic games at underage, and it's interesting, when you look at the number of people in Ireland, the number of young kids that play sport and that get engaged at every level, it is hugely important. And yes, you mentioned earlier about the language, about the locker room culture, which goes through, and that's the same in a 12-year-old as it is in a 32-year-old. So we can't pin it on just sort of the old school, because it's still coming through in kids today. Is there space, and does it need to come from sports, or does Sporting Pride have a role to play in terms of educating coaches like me, so that we'll know how to address in the proper fashion what it is? Because there's a danger that we look in June at Pride, and we see the colour, and we see the fizz, and we see the excitement of it, but then it just drifts away from centre stage. Whereas this is, if you're LGBT, you're living with this every moment of every day. It's what you are, it's who you are. And what can we do as coaches and as sports to actually encourage younger people to recognize that, so that we can change things properly from a generational perspective?
No, I think that's a very fair point. I think education and training, Rob, is a key part to how we can ever make change, especially at the youth level. We do have, we actually have a free workshop that we offer to national governing bodies on LGBT, even the wording, basic stuff about the things to understand about what the letters stand for, what to do if a coach, someone comes to you. So we offer free training with Shout Out, the charity organisation, on that, and we encourage any national governing body who wants to take advantage of free LGBTQ inclusive training to get in contact with us, info@sportingpride.ie, and we'll put them in touch with that. But definitely the training, and that training can happen. Can be a club that comes to us and wants to do that free training is available for anybody who wants to do that. So again, it's an important part. There's so much going on, but that is a key part of what we offer is partnership with the training, an online training module about learning about how to deal with LGBT athletes or members of your club or your sport.
It's a busy world. There's an awful lot for you to do as a very small resourced sporting organisation.
Volunteer,
doing a wonderful job as well. So, well, look, I'll let you get back into the real world. Really appreciate you taking the time. I'm delighted that we've been able to bring this together, because we've been talking about it for a while now. But it's absolutely the right thing to do. And thank you very much. We'll get the details of the Let's Get Visible campaign up onto the Sport for Business website as part of the recording of this as well, which I know a lot of people have been interested in seeing. So for the moment anyway, Aidan Walsh, Chair of Sporting Pride, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone.